Episode 3 of My Adventures with Superman just came out, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about. This episode opens up with Superman saving a man from a fire in his apartment. We learn that this man is Silas Stone, father of Victor Stone, and a bit after we learn this, we learn that Victor Stone, aka Cyborg, is 9 years old in this universe.
Just imagine what could have happened if your son had been home. Ooh, he's what, 9? 10?
I think it's really interesting that they introduced this character so quickly into this universe's lore. But I like the fact that Cyborg is 9 years old because that pretty much means that we're not gonna see him anytime soon. And that means that it's just a nice little Easter egg and the show is going to stay centered on Superman and Superman characters. Something that I thought was interesting about this scene is the way that Superman saves Silas Stone from the fire. Before Superman even gets to Silas, a blue energy surrounds his body, and then he touches Silas and that same blue energy surrounds him too. I'm not too sure on this, but I think this is Superman's tactile telekinesis, which pretty much means he has telekinesis on anything he physically touches instead of like Jean Grey telekinesis where she doesn't have to touch it and she just moves it with her mind. Superman has to actually touch the item to be able to move it with his mind. I think that's the ability we're seeing here, but I'm not too sure because this is not how I ever would have visualized this power being used. Soon after that, we see Lois go to report on an announcement being made at Amertech. In this episode, Amertech seems to be the company that's trying to replace Amazo, the company last season that made Parasite. And while Lois is at this announcement, the CEO of Amertech announces that they built a robot named Metallo. Now, right now, this robot's not too bad, it's not doing anything crazy, but before this episode went to commercial break, I was sitting there thinking about it and I was like, okay, obviously, somehow, Lex is gonna get a hold of these Metallo robots and he's gonna put kryptonite in them. And that's how we're going to get our classic Metallo. But that's just my own theory. We'll see how that works out. Now, it turns out at this Amertech website, we see John Henry Irons is actually the lead scientist. And after the announcement made by the CEO, Lois Lane competes with Vicky Vale from Gotham to interview John Henry Irons for a story. And that's pretty much Lois's plot for the entire episode up until she catches up with Superman. And I actually really like the dynamic between Lois Lane and Vicky Vale. They're both super passionate and competitive reporters, and they see that in each other and they respect each other, but they both stand on business. And I think it's just a very interesting dynamic to watch, and I just really enjoyed it in this episode. Now, on Clark's side of the episode, him and Jimmy are looking after one of the little kids from the Daily Planet named Flip, who went off on her own to investigate some deadly robots or evil killer robots, something crazy. When they finally catch up to Flip, turns out she's in an apartment and we learn that she's John Henry Irons' niece, Natasha Irons. I'm not gonna lie, I was not into this plotline at all until we learned that that's Natasha Irons. I was literally sitting there about to say like, yo, the stuff that they've been doing with Jimmy this season is low-key boring, like I'm not getting into it. But the writers are surprising me, man. They found a way to tie it all together, and honestly, I'll admit when I'm wrong, okay? They were cooking. So Superman and Jimmy meet John Henry Irons, and John Henry tells the two everything that's been going on at Amertech. We learn that Amertech is basically building super dangerous robots, and when those robots get too close together, their energy sources collide and it starts to explode. And the entire Amertech building is using this energy source. So once they turn it on, it will explode. And they said in this episode that this energy rivals nuclear power plants. So I'm gonna assume this would be a pretty big explosion. Soon after that, both Lois and Vicky Vale appear to investigate John Henry Irons. Then out of nowhere, Livewire comes in through the window and destroys the evidence on John Henry Irons' computer. One thing I took note of during this scene was the fact that Superman kinda let Livewire get away, which leads me to believe that she'll most likely be coming back in a later episode. And I just really wonder what she has to do with the rest of the plot that was going on. And the fact that she got away makes me think that what happened in this episode will be carried into future episodes, even though it kind of seems like the story ends here. But anyway, Superman and John Henry Irons go to Amertech to try to stop the explosion because they're turning on the energy source again tonight. When they get there, Superman starts to fight a bunch of the Metallo robots, and he starts to lose somehow. They don't even look that strong to me, but somehow he's starting to lose. And he gets saved by John Henry Irons in his steel suit. I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of like 50-50 on this steel suit design. It's not ideal, it's nothing I would have asked for personally, and if I could change it, I definitely would. But honestly, it's such a unique design, and it fits the show so well that I'm not really complaining. Like, I mess with it, you know? I hope they add the Superman shield on the front and the red cape always. But you know what? It's honestly not that bad. Like, I can live with this. It's not bad. After the energy source turns on, it starts to get bigger and ready to explode, and Superman flies up there and uses his supposed tactile telekinesis on it to hold the explosion in, while John Henry Irons destroys the energy source so the energy can dissipate. And just like that, they save the day. In the morning, Clark writes an entire story on John Henry Irons and how he was the true hero, and that really makes me wonder if John Henry Irons is going to be a consistent character we see this season. I really hope that after the failure of Amertech, he goes to work at Star Labs so he can make himself an even better suit as well, because unfortunately he did not get to keep the suit at the end of this episode. And that's because at the very end of the episode, Lex Luthor shows up at Amertech and says he now owns everything under his new company LexCorp, and not only does he take possession of the Metallosuits, which proves my theory earlier that I came up with within the same episode, which was crazy, but not only does he take the Metallo robots, he also takes John Henry Irons' steel suit. And one theory I have about that is that somehow Lex is going to turn that steel suit into a Lexo suit that he'll end up fighting Superman with at some point. I think that would be a really cool detail for them to do in the future, but we won't know until we see it. All in all, this episode was pretty great. It gave us tons of cool characters to look forward to. So far, season 2 of this show is turning out to be just as good as the first. But I hope soon we get more into the Kryptonian aspect, like the stuff with the Fortress of Solitude and with Kara Zor-El. But that's all for this breakdown of episode 3 of My Adventures with Superman. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button for me and leave me a comment. If you didn't enjoy this video, please let me know why in the comments so I can improve my videos in the future. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.